everyone, welcome back to my channel. I come to you today from my very glamorous hospital accommodation that I'm currently staying in. I've tried to make it look a little bit cozier. I've put some fairy lights out on the sofa, so hopefully the background is okay. It's pretty much all I've got to work with. I was going to film in my bedroom, but the window in there is so small that I just think the lighting would be really bad. It's been a little while. Obviously I uploaded a couple videos recently. I uploaded some vlogs that I filmed before my dad passed away, and I uploaded the tribute video to him. So I have been uploading, but I haven't spoken to you properly since my dad passed away. So I thought it would be good to just sit down and chat to you today about how everything's been going, what happened, and how I'm doing now, I guess. First of all, I really wanted to say thank you so much for all of your kind messages and comments over the last few months. I know I don't always reply to them. I do try, but if I don't, it's just because I get overwhelmed, and especially with comments about losing dad, and I just really appreciate all the love and support, whether it's through sending me messages on Instagram or here on YouTube. I do read them all, and I really appreciate all of them, especially on the tribute to my dad video I made. That video is so important for me to make because he was really my biggest fan on this YouTube channel, and every week when I would upload a vlog, he would ask for me to send him a link to the vlog, and he would always like tell me how much he enjoyed it, and I'd be like, Dad, stop being silly, these vlogs must be so boring for you, they're not really for your like audience, I guess. But he would always say how much he enjoyed them. But it was important to me to show you like who he was as a person and how amazing he was. And I really could go on about that all day, but that's not what this video is about. But if you want to learn more about who my dad was as a person, then please go and watch the tribute I made to him. I'd really appreciate if you took some time to learn about his life. I guess first of all, I just wanted to tell you about Dad and what happened to him. It is a really long story, but I'm just gonna try and keep it brief because it's really hard to talk about the details, and it was a really traumatic few months, and it was only a few months, but it was really traumatic. And the first half of the year was pretty normal. Everyone was just getting on with things. Dad was working. He was doing 3 days a week, I think. He was playing tennis, I think once a week with his tennis partner, just getting on with life, and I wasn't worried about him, and we spoke most days either via text or phone call, and I was busy with obviously doing my placements, so it was just a completely ordinary time. There was nothing strange going on. The only real hint was that he started to lose tennis matches more, and he was like, oh, I can't beat Jeremy, and I said, you'll get him next time, Dad, and just didn't really notice anything. And then I think around April, May is when he started to have some issues with mobility, and he wasn't able to walk as far. And by this point he was going to his GP, and that's one thing I think is really important to tell you, is my dad was so good at going to the GP. You know, he went for his prostate check in February. My mum as well was very good at encouraging him, so he was definitely on it with going to the GP. And I know that the GP practice were also very on it and trying to figure out what was going on, because I think he was a little bit of a conundrum for them. Basically, he just had some very non-specific symptoms, not the ones that come up when you Google prostate cancer. So it took them a while to go down that route. But basically, the story for me begins on Father's Day this year, because I was unaware really of anything serious happening until Father's Day. Like, looking back now, we had such a nice meal. It was a really nice day. We sat outside and we went to our favourite Thai restaurant near home. I nearly didn't go because I was so stressed about exams. I said to Jack, I'm not sure if I can go down to pool for the day and waste a whole day when I could be in the library. I'm so glad that I went and had that Father's Day meal with him. But there was one moment during the meal where I think Dermot, my brother, Jack and my dad were chatting about the cricket, and I just turned to my mum and I went, he's alright, isn't he? About my dad. I was like, he's alright. And she just gave me this look, and the look just said 1,000 words, and the look said, no, he's not alright. And that's when she told me that he needed to have a biopsy of his prostate, because he'd had an MRI and there was a sinister looking pelvic mass there. In the car on the way home, I cried the whole way home because I knew that that meant bad things, because he needed a biopsy. Anyway, my exams were happening, and I had 2 weeks to exams at this point, I think. Suddenly I had this other thing in my mind, like, oh my gosh, my dad's not very well, and he likely has cancer. But I tried to get on with exams because I just needed to get that 2 weeks out of the way. And I know in that time my mum, dad and my sisters went to Benidorm on holiday because they decided that they weren't sure what was about to happen, so let's just go on holiday. And I'm sad I didn't get to go because of exams, but I'm really happy that my dad got to go away and have a holiday. Although at that time he'd started to lose weight and his appetite was changing. We were just remaining hopeful. You know, prostate cancer is usually slow growing, and what you read about it, I'm sure a lot of you know because you're probably a medical student if you're watching this video, or most of you are. What you read about prostate cancer, it's usually slow growing. There's lots of treatment options. Lots of men live for a long time with prostate cancer, and in fact a lot of the time they go for a watch and wait approach with prostate cancer. So I just tried to keep telling myself, like, okay, this is bad, but it might not be that bad, and it probably isn't that bad, and we're just gonna have to, you know, be a family and be strong and just get through this as a team, and dad will be okay. And that's just what I told myself throughout exams. And don't get me wrong, it was hard, and Francesca, who was revising with me every day, knows how worried I was. And he had the biopsy at Bournemouth Hospital, where I am on placement now, on the same day I had my final exam. You know, he was under general anaesthetic when I was in the exam room. It literally was at the same time. That was all that I was thinking about. He waited 3 weeks for the results of the biopsy. 3 weeks, which I just think is outrageous because that's a really long time to have to wait. And I know it was an agonising wait for him and my mum and for me. And on the 20th of July, I got my 3rd year exam results. And I phoned him to tell him I passed, because that was what I always do. I ring my dad and tell him my results, whether I failed or passed. And he was so happy for me to get through to 4th year. And then the following day he went to his GP and was told that he had adenocarcinoma, I think, of the prostate. But he needed to wait to see the urologist to know the treatment plan and kind of anything else about it. And he had that meeting with the urologist on the 1st of August, I believe, and he went to the hospital with my mum to get the full kind of information. And that's when they told him he had stage 4 prostate cancer, and the prostate cancer had spread to his liver, which is unusual because you read about it spreading to bone, but it had spread to his liver. The reassuring thing was that on the CT scan there was only a tiny speck of prostate cancer in his liver. And I know that he was told in that meeting that he needed to not worry because he had plenty of years left. He just needed to go along with the treatment plan. So it was absolutely gutting to know that he'd been given a terminal diagnosis. We just tried to see the positives and hope for the best. And yeah, I was absolutely devastated that day when I got the phone call from my mum. But yeah, we just thought, okay, well, we're gonna have to work with years. We're all gonna stick together. And then in August, he started the treatment, which was an injection, anti-testosterone treatment that they do for prostate cancer. And it's not very nice, but I just thought, well, at least he's not having to go through like a chemo regime. I don't know, I tried to see the positives and I think he did too. In August, he just got more and more poorly, losing weight, no appetite, and it was really worrying. And then at the end of August, he had a blood test, and the results of that blood test meant he had to go into hospital. He had a follow-up CT scan when he went into hospital, and that showed that the cancer had gone from a tiny speck in his liver to being everywhere in his liver within the space of, I think, 2 months. He was in hospital for 10 days, and in that time he saw the consultant oncologist who he was booked in to see in September, but they brought the appointment forward. And in that meeting with my mum, he was told that it was a very aggressive form of prostate cancer. And the consultant said that he only sees 1 case or 2, like my dad's, every year. And that's just not what you want to hear, is it? So the feeling I felt when I heard that was just awful. And suddenly it went from him having some years left to live to having months if he was lucky. So that's kind of what we were dealing with. And then the consultant said they could give him this drug called darolutamide, which is meant to be like a turbocharged prostate cancer drug, and all the studies on it are really good and positive. And so we just tried to be hopeful that this drug would give him some more time. But unfortunately it didn't work, and the cancer continued to grow. And in his last month, he spent most of his time at home. He really wanted to be at home. He didn't want to go into a hospice. He had to go to hospital briefly because he got an infection, but he came out of hospital on the 30th of September, and he spent his last days with us at home. and I'm really glad that we were able to do that for him, because I know it was really important. He didn't like being in hospital, he didn't want to go to a hospice, he just wanted to be in his safe space, and we were able to, as a team, with the help of carers and district nurses and GPs and each other, we were able to facilitate that. My mum was incredible at this time, my siblings were amazing. It was completely a jarring and just traumatic time, but we stuck together so well, and my dad was so brave. So he was discharged from hospital the last time on the 30th of September, and he spent the final 5 days with us at home. Yeah, he passed away when we were all there with him, and I'm so grateful that I got to be there. It was so rewarding to be able to look after him in his final days after he'd been such an amazing dad. That is a brief overview of the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. Hopefully I'm not delivering that in a too deadpan of a way, but I've told that story quite a few times. You know, if you want to hear more about the man my dad actually was, then go and watch my tribute to him, because, you know, that is who he was. Cancer was just a small part of his life. Okay. Oof. So while all this was going on, obviously I had my summer break, and then I started my psychiatry placement, and it was in those weeks at the start of the placement when he started to deteriorate, and we were getting all this bad news all the time, and everything was just changing rapidly. But he was very clear, my dad, that I had to continue with the course, and he was the same with my sister, because my little sister Amelia had just started a PGCE, and she's training to be a science teacher. And he was so adamant that we continued with the courses and we didn't kind of risk falling behind because of everything that was going on. And obviously I listened to my dad and tried my very best to do that, and so did Amelia. I managed to continue going to placement. I would kind of leave early and I would miss days, but luckily the team running the psychiatry placement where I was so supportive and understanding of what was going on, and even my consultant was so nice about it, and you know, he understood I wouldn't always want to hang around because I'd want to go see dad, especially when he was in hospital. And you know, some days I found placement to be a good distraction, but some days I would be in placement and I needed to leave. Like it was just too much. When he passed away, I took a week off of compassionate leave. I think I probably could have taken a bit more, but I don't know if I was just in shock and not really behaving properly, but I really just wanted to go back and not fail the placement, and I don't think they would have failed me, but I had this idea of like, I need to go back, I need to go back, I need to pass the placement, I can't fail after everything, like I've made it this far, I can't fail on week 8 of the placement. We have these little tests at Southampton called ACCs, Assessment of Clinical Competence, and we have to do a few of those for each placement. And what they just involve is a consultant watching you take a history and do an examination and then present the patient. And I had to do 3 of those for psychiatry, and all of my ACCs were booked in the week following my dad's death. And I actually can't believe this, but I went to the ACCs, like one of them was 4 days after my dad died. So I did take a week off, but I didn't really, because I actually went in, and like, I can't believe I did that. Like, I shouldn't have done that, but I did. And I went and did the ACCs and I passed them. But I think in my mind I was just like, I don't want to have to do these in the summer, or I don't want to have to do these as a resit or something. I don't know. Anyway, I did them in between all of the funeral admin. But like, looking back, I think I should have just taken more time off, because realistically I think I still would have passed the placement if I'd have taken like 2 weeks off. So the final day of the placement was on the Thursday. Got everything signed off, told I was passed, and then dad's funeral was on the Friday. I'd put so much effort into helping mum with the funeral, and it was so important to get that day right. We had a wake where we had live music and there was some dancing, and obviously it was the most surreal, awful day, but at the same time I feel like we did dad justice and we gave him the best send-off we could, and I guess that's all you could hope for. But the day after the funeral we went to watch Burnley play Bournemouth, and dad was supposed to go to that game, so it was like incredibly emotional, incredibly difficult. Then the Sunday I went back to Winchester with Jack because I had to start my next placement in Southampton on the Monday morning, and that's when it really hit me. Like, that was the hardest day for me, because the funeral was done, I was moving away from my mum back to Winchester to carry on with my life, and it just felt so wrong. You think that when the funeral's done they're just going to come back and be like, it was all a joke, and you just think they're going to walk through the door and all you're left with is that they're gone. And that's so hard. And so I think the few weeks after that were the hardest for me. Only now am I slowly starting to like accept what's happened and do a little bit better, but it takes time. And like, if you're going through this as well, you'll understand, like, you have awful days and then you have like an okay day, but you feel guilty for having an okay day, and then when you have a really bad day you feel like you're never going to have another good day. So it's really awful, and it's not linear at all. But I do feel now, 2 months down the line, I'm at a point where, I say as I clear a tear from my eye, I feel 2 months down the line that I'm at a point where, you know, I've accepted what's happened, and I'm trying so hard to keep going and try and enjoy life. But I think that will come slowly with time, and I just think if you are going through something like this, it's so important to like just not put pressure on yourself, because people move on and expect you to just be back to normal, and that's just not gonna happen for a long time. So take your time and be kind to yourself, and don't beat yourself up if you have a bad day or a day where you want to stay in bed. I wanted to kind of speak a little bit about the course as well and how that's going. So since I last filmed a video, I've done 4 speciality weeks in Southampton. A week of ophthalmology, I did a week of ENT, I did a week of neurosciences, and I did a week of dermatology. Those were the most intense 4 weeks I've had in a long time, because you had to pass each week individually, and if you missed one day of the week, obviously you were missing 20% of the placement. So attendance was like a big thing. It was just like kind of forced me to get back into a routine, because I had to go in every day. And I'm not saying I was taking anything in. I was purely showing up. I was showing up to get my signatures and pass the placement. I was really struggling to engage with any kind of learning. I would sometimes sit in the lecture theatres with tears streaming down my face. But I got through it and I passed all of those 4 weeks. Barely remember the first half of that, to be honest. But you know, I was in Winchester with Jack and adjusting to living there again, and I barely lived there because, you know, we only moved there in the summer, and that's when Dad got ill, and I was trying to spend as much time in pool as possible. So barely lived in this flat in Winchester. Suddenly it was my home, and I was like, and right now I am at the end of week 2 of my next placement, which is acute care. So I had a week in Southampton of induction lectures, which you will see in a vlog next week, and I've just finished my very first week at Bournemouth Hospital on the acute medical ward there. And I've got 2 weeks left. I've got a week on intensive care and a week in the emergency department right before Christmas, so that's going to be interesting. And that's where we're at with the course. I'm continuing with the course, but I can totally understand why somebody would choose to take time out when they're going through this. If I was at medical school in Manchester and it took me, what, 5 hours to get home, I probably would have had to take a year out. Because when I was on placement in Poole, I was literally staying in Poole Hospital when he was a patient in Poole Hospital. So I could pop down from my room and go and visit him on the ward. If I was at university on the other side of the country, that wouldn't have been a possibility, and I would have probably had to take time out. So that is also an important factor in this. In fact, some days I think maybe I should just take a year out. What is the rush? But I think what's best for me is to continue and to have something that keeps me motivated, that keeps me going. Dad wanted me to be a doctor. He was proud of me. He wouldn't want me to stop what I'm doing. I know that. And I also have to think about myself and what I want to do, and I think I want to carry on. So that's what I'm doing. And so far, that first month was really hard, and yeah, like I say, I didn't take anything in. But now I'm starting to enjoy the course again. I'm definitely at a point where I'm going in to learn and listening and taking stuff in a bit more. My memory still isn't very good and my attention span is quite short, but it's getting better. I still got 5 months till exams, so I'm not too worried about that right now, and I think that over time I should be able to find that motivation. At the moment, I'm happy with my choice to stay on the course, but I also just want to make it so clear that taking time out is not a bad thing, and it might be the right thing for you. And I also wanted to briefly speak about the support the uni have given me. The placement I was on for psychiatry were really supportive. In terms of the actual university, I reached out to them kind of 2 or 3 weeks before Dad died, when I knew things were pretty bad. I reached out and told them what was going on. The lead pastoral person, tutor for the year, had a Teams meeting with me, and she was really good, and we had a long chat about what was happening. She kind of said, you know, with psychiatry placement, it's okay to miss some days, but you're going to be going into speciality weeks where your attendance needs to be really good, and there's only so much leeway they have with like letting you have time off. It's not like a job where you can have compassionate leave and take holiday and take unpaid leave. You don't have that option at medical school. If you don't attend a certain amount of days, then you fail. It's really hard because they obviously are trying to be supportive, but they can't make certain exceptions, and there would become a point probably where they just tell me to repeat the year, or, you know, take time out and start the year again. And I was really worried about that, but one thing they did do was change one of my placements later in the year. So I was due to go to Dorchester for paediatrics placement, which, you know, it's not that far from my house in Winchester, it's not that far from Poole, but it is quite far. I think it would take an hour and a half on the train to get back to Jack in Winchester, and I would only be with a few other students, like 1 or 2 in a house. The idea of being kind of, not isolated, but maybe in a more kind of challenging scenario when it came to placements was giving me a lot of anxiety, and I just said, would it be possible to have a placement closer to home for that placement? And they changed it for me, and they put me in Southampton for my paediatrics placement. So that's me at the moment. I'm surviving, I'm getting through it. I'm very lucky to have a really close family, and I'm just so grateful to have them at this time, and I'm also really grateful to have Jack. I've never spoken about it on here, but his dad also passed away from cancer, pancreatic cancer, when Jack was 17, so that was 13 years ago now. But I obviously never got to meet Jack's dad, but Jack unfortunately knows the feelings I'm having, and obviously it's heartbreaking to now be experiencing these feelings and know that that's what Jack went through at a really young age. You know, he was just a teenager. It's kind of added a new layer to our relationship. We're now part of the same very sad club, and I'm so grateful to have him, and I've been so grateful to have him throughout this whole time. I'm just lucky to have the support network I do, really, and all of my amazing friends as well, who've been absolutely brilliant and understanding of me for the last few months. So people you choose to have around you are so important, and I'm just so glad that I've got an amazing group of people around me to get me through this really difficult time. And I've been talking for ages, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up. I was gonna answer some questions, but I feel like people have asked me stuff like tips for medical school interviews, and it just doesn't feel like the right time to be answering those questions on this video. So I think I'm just gonna wrap it up here. I will see you very soon. I've got some vlogs coming. My life is very different now. You know, I am never gonna be the same again. I'm ultimately changed by this life experience, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to enjoy my life, because obviously my dad wants me to live a long and happy life, and one day I will be able to feel proper happiness again. But right now I am surviving. Hope you guys are all doing well, and I will see you in the next video.